because behind the scenes, I was like so depressed. Hey, like I'd go home and I hated myself, and I would still lapse occasionally on like drugs or alcohol, or I was still going through these stages. So to this guy and to these people around me, they're thinking everything's okay, but man, I was like dying inside. Hey.
What is up, everyone? I am Lachlan Samuel, and this is the Open Up Podcast, the show where real people open up and share real stories of struggle. Before we kick off today's episode with Brendan McCormack, aka Brendo, aka Perthfitfam man, I just want to let you guys know that the audio is going to be a little bit sketchy throughout this entire interview. That being said, there are a lot of nuggets of gold in this. We do delve into psychedelics, into drug addiction, business, and the fear of failure, which is wrapped up in all of those subjects. I know you're going to love this episode, so please bear with me, bear with this, and I appreciate anyone who listens all the way to the end. Cheers! What is up, everyone? I am Lachlan Samuel, and this is the Open Up Podcast, episode number 9, with Brendan McCormack, who is going to do his own intro. My man.
My own, yeah, we've been chatting about this. So, Brendan McCormack, co-founder of Perthfitfam, F45 Perth playoff champion, Crossfit regionals, team qualifier, and was it professional pug dog owner? No.
Professional pug dog owner.
Yeah, that's right. Nah, it's So I got a thing with hacking your way through life, or life hacks, and so with the F45 thing, technically, well, not technically, am F45 team playoff champion. I was able to do that literally by putting a team of quality athletes around me,
Nice,
submitting us into the competition and then winning. So it's not what you know, it's who you know, and then pretty much the same thing with the CrossFit regionals, where so I'm from Legion CrossFit. We qualified in the top 6. Now our box owner and coach Jem had an injury, so 3 weeks in he couldn't, or 2 weeks in he couldn't do any of the workouts. So from week 3 to week 5, and it just so happened that on the 4th week it was a workout that really suited me. So I was in the top 2 guys of the box. So my name is legitimately on the team roster of the CrossFit Regionals qualifiers. Nice. So definitely don't deserve to be there, but it's just my claim to fame at the moment. So I'm gonna take it.
Oh, that's good, man. You're doing a lot.
Yeah, no, I've been busy, man. It's been crazy.
Well, now that we've gone through all your accomplishments so far,
pseudo accomplishments, yes.
We're going to dive right into your story and start with childhood.
Yeah.
What we want to know from your childhood is how you were raised, the environment you were raised in, and any influences or events that sort of affected you and the person you become.
Yeah, it's a good one. So I've had to go back and write a whole stack of notes of my journey, my timeline, and how we're going to go through it. So starting off and growing up, I grew up in Canberra. Middle class family. So I say a very typical upbringing, but I think a lot of people will say a very typical upbringing. My parents are together; they never got divorced. I had a sister, so the standard, mum, dad, and 2 kids.
Yeah.
I was the younger brother, but very, very. I look back and I appreciate what my parents did. I didn't think much of it, at the time.
Yeah.
But we always lived in new homes. And they had like decent cars. They weren't wealthy or anything. Like just public servants. My dad was a bus driver. My mum was in the public service. But we had a really good upbringing. As far as me growing up, I was very sporty. So my sport was baseball.
Yeah.
And I was very musical as well. So ever since I was about 6, I played music. And same thing with baseball. Like just from a young age, I was heavily into both. And they were both, extremes. So no different to now. Whatever I do, it's an extreme. So when I was a baseballer, I was a state baseballer, which is how I ended up in Perth. So I was kind of like, for my age, I was like, the top of that.
Yeah.
When I was playing guitar, when I was into music, I was always in bands. I was always, playing like on stage, that sort of stuff. So yeah, I wasn't half-hearted in either. endeavours.
Yeah. And were there any events throughout your childhood that you feel shaped you or influenced you before you started to go through that first struggle?
I don't think. No, I think it was a bit later on for me. Like trying to delve back, I don't think I had key trigger points as a kid.
Yeah.
And I've tried to, and like going through self-discovery, I've really tried to delve into it, and I don't think, from what I've found, there was nothing in that within that age that really triggered me in a negative way. I think the closest thing to a decision which I would have addressed differently was when I was 15. I think I was about 15, and I was playing baseball, and I was at that stage where there was a chance of making it into the, I perceived there was a chance of, that's the age group where you get signed to be on the Australian team, or where you get signed to go to a college team in America. And I remember for the Nationals that year, I put so much pressure on myself as an athlete that I couldn't pick up a ball, I couldn't throw a ball straight. I just, for 2 weeks that we were playing as Nationals, I went from being like a good baseballer to just pathetic, and like just couldn't do anything right. And like at the end of that, I was so disheartened that I think I made the decision then. You know what? I've been playing since I was 6 years old. I'm just gonna take a year off, and I'll come back. I just need a bit of time to chill. And, I'll just focus on music. And it's funny because I never came back after that. And all the guys that were underneath me. So I finished up and I won MVP for my club. Well, I was MVP for my club that year. So I was sort of at that sort of level. Yeah. And then the year after, that's when all the guys under me started getting signed to the academy. Some of them got signed to Australia. Some of them got shipped over to America. Wow. And so the lesson in my life then was, and this is what I say if I'm ever, I guess, helping younger people, was you're only going to get a shot of this. By the time you're in your 20s, mid-20s, 30s, you're not going to be able to get that shot again. So you may as well commit, like unless you're really out of it, you may as well commit and go full out. And I don't look at it as a regret, like I wish I did it, but it was definitely a key lesson in life.
Okay, yeah. Being disheartened and knowing that you're good enough to make it, and then having those moments where you sort of struggle and, I guess, let that fear seep in. You start telling yourself that maybe it's not meant to be. Is that something you carried throughout your life from that point?
No, I think that the most... I take that as a lesson, so I take that as a positive. I think the biggest negative that came out of that is because then I wasn't playing sport and I was focusing solely on music. It made it really easy to smoke bongs. Oh. Like it made it really easy that I wasn't health or fitness conscious anymore. Yeah. And so, I was smoking, I was, smoking weed on the weekends. And so I probably went into the extreme of, that musician sort of lifestyle. Man, I had like long blonde hair at one stage. Like I was like a little Kurt Cobain, little Daniel Johns from Silverchair. Like that was the ideal of my life at that point in time.
It's a big old contrast because I think I've seen your post a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago, about accepting being bald. Yeah,
it's true. Yeah, we could probably like delve into that as well. It's like where you have an understanding of yourself and this vision of who you are isn't really who you are, and it's quite going through the whole bald thing was weird. Hey, and I didn't realize it for 5 years. Like we're fast tracking now, but for 5 years I pretty much wore a hat, and it was weird because seeing yourself on camera or like even in the mirror, it's like, oh, it doesn't seem like me, because you grow up your whole life with hair, and then when you start shaving it, it's like it's not you. And for everyone else, they don't, they just see you as that, and it's cool, and there's no difference. This is just who you are. And so, this year, that was one of my challenges where I was like, okay, I'm not going to wear a hat, all year. And then from New Year's, I kept on wearing a hat. And a few people called me up on it because usually, these tasks, I usually go full out on. Yeah. And this one, I couldn't do it. Or I just put it off thinking, oh, no one will notice. And it took me up until the end of February to go, you know what? This is commitment. This is what I said I was going to do. And I ended up taking it off. And then once I did, it was like, accepting it. I was like, oh, yeah, cool. I'm happy with this. This is sweet. It's funny the things we hold on to, hey?
Yeah. Did you get many people reaching out to you to tell you, or sort of scratching their heads saying, like, how how have you not accepted this yet? This is the person we see you as.
No, like not like in that way, but yeah, a lot of people are like, dude, like it's normal, like you rock it. You know, it's like this is cool, like as in like this is who you are.
Yeah.
You know, this is the Brendo that we know, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not. You know, it's not who I know. Like now it is, because it's like once I accepted it, it was like, oh yeah, cool. Like this is me. I'm happy with that. But yeah, it's just funny. Like it's funny something so small. Like you hold on to it in such a subtle way.
What do you think was holding you back from actually accepting it?
I don't know. I think it's just that weirdness. It's like it's not how you perceive yourself.
Yeah.
When you see yourself. So it was weird. So whenever I did like a video, like I did a few videos without wearing a hat, and I looked at it and I'm like, nah, it doesn't even look like I'm looking at myself. And this is like me looking at me.
It's so odd.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, and this is, you know, I've been doing this, I've been doing videos and stuff now, but like on Perthfitfam specifically for like 18 months. So I'm pretty used to seeing myself on camera. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But as soon as I didn't have a hat on, I was like, oh no, that doesn't look like you. So anyway, yeah, it was.
And how long have you been shaving your head for?
I think I first did it maybe around about 26, 27. I think around about that age, and I've really been doing it like consistently maybe from 29.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think from about 29 is when I went, oh, you can't go back now, so yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you've accepted that.
I know, so am I, hey.
I'm going to have to accept that one day as well.
No, mate, you got a full head of hair. You got plenty going on up there.
Yeah, it's going slowly. So we want to get back to that childhood and going through those 2 weeks where you sort of struggled through nationals.
Yeah.
And then learning that lesson from that to take your shot when it comes up.
Yeah.
Was there a moment, or what was the first moment after that 2 weeks at nationals where you thought, hold on, I've learned this lesson already, I think I'm going to try and take this shot?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think...
Because, let me just put it out there, because
yeah.
as someone in Perth in the fitness industry in general,
yeah.
people would see you as the person who does take the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's in parallel. It probably is. You can't jump around. Like, once you know who you are and where you're going, you don't have time to skip. It's like, you know when you're driving in traffic and, you know, you're trying to find the fast, like in, let's say, peak hour traffic, and you're trying to jump from lane to lane to get places, but then the guy that you tried to overtake, well, next thing his lane's going forward, and then he's like way ahead of you, and because you tried to get ahead but jumping from lane to lane, you know, it doesn't work. I think once you know who you are and where you're going, at least for that period of your life, once you've got the chance to do it, you just need to commit. Like, you need to almost put on blinkers and just say, no, this is me. This is where my value is. This is what I want to achieve within this period of time. And so you need to like commit to stay within that. Okay. Like I said, if I couldn't try and go back to base, like if I tried to go back to play baseball now, like my opportunity is gone. I'm not going to do it. Whether I have the natural talent to do it, I'm not going to be able to do it. You know, if I was trying to compete seriously in CrossFit, you know, at a younger age. So I've got a friend at the moment who's exceptionally good at CrossFit, and I've had this chat with him as well, where I'm like, dude, you have this small window of opportunity to do what you want to do within this field of your life. If you don't, you know, convert, which is fine, like your life will go ahead, but you won't be able to come back in the way that you are now. Yeah. You know, music. So I don't really play music anymore. And I still get I get the itch about 3 months of a year where I'll pick up a guitar and I'll play and I'll learn a lot of the songs that I used to be able to play. But if I really wanted to become exceptional at music, I would have to play like all the time, like you know, every day. You know what I mean? And strive to become better at that.
I think what they say is 10,000 hours.
Yeah. That's the Malcolm Gladwell book.
Yeah.
The Idolises book.
Yes.
So it's 10,000 hours, which is about 10 years to become good at anything. Yep. So my advice for people is if you have a talent, like a desire or a passion for something, and that's what you want to do, you better like strap in, because like it doesn't happen overnight, and you've got to consistently do it. So going back to me, and I guess my life. So at 30, when I almost to the day when I turned 30, I was that confident in this is who I am, this is where I'm going, this is what I do, this is the industry that I love. This is what I'm going to make an impact in. So I'm 33 next month.
And that's powerful because a lot of young people, especially myself, when I was 24 and going through my own depression and struggle, I felt like I needed to know what I was supposed to do at that age. And even people at like 18, 20 now feel like that. So it's good to see someone like you who's going after what you want and achieving those targets or objectives.
Yeah.
And it kicked off at 30.
Dude, it was 30. You know, so Tim Ferriss is one author that, that I look at. I've gone through his whole journey with him as well.
He's an amazing podcaster.
Yeah, great podcaster. Just, I guess, me with my life hacking sort of stuff, like winning these things. I probably not modeled intentionally, but because I don't get inspired by anyone. Like, there's no one that I want to be. I'm Brendan McCormack. I just want to be me. I'm that comfortable in my skin. There's no one that I idolize, but he's probably the most similar parallel in the way that we do stuff. And I've probably learned that by reading his books without intentionally trying to do it. So what was my point with Tim Ferriss?
Ferriss going along, finding your passion and purpose.
Yeah.
At an older age.
Yeah, so Tim Ferriss. So he didn't do that till he was 32.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, so he had like all of his successes and all of
4-hour work week?
Yeah, 4-Hour Work Week I think was 32 when that was released. And I remember reading that when I must have been 24. And I was the same as you. I was, so much into personal development. I was such an ambitious person. But then I would compare my achievements with what Donald Trump achieved at 24 and with what, all these other people. And I'm like, why aren't I a millionaire yet? I'm a shit human. Like, I'm not doing this right. And that was like, looking back now, I reckon that was basically what stemmed a lot of my behaviours and depressions and cycles because I felt like I was an unaccomplished nobody.
I think that's what a lot of depression stems from as well. That's exactly what mine was from.
Yeah.
It's just feeling like a failure because you're comparing yourself to people who haven't been through the same shit you've been through, who haven't had the same situations to take their opportunities. Dude,
it's impossible. And you know what the craziest thing is? I went to Japan. And actually, Donald Trump's president now, so that's a bad example because everyone's going to know him. But guys who we idolise, if you go to another country, like for us, we're like, oh, this is big. Imagine if we were this famous. But it's all perspective. Because if you go to another country or another area or, whatever, and these guys who we idolise, they don't even know who this guy is. If he was there, he could just walk through the street like another person. It's funny, like a real life example. So in the fitness industry, it's like most people would know who I am. It's kind of cool, but, it is what it is. It's not, I'm just a dude, but I've been around for that long, and, obviously we've had a level of success, and so most people know who I am. I went to go pick up my girlfriend from her work last night. She was at a work function. She now works in property. And I walked up and they were like, oh, we've seen you on, Shell's Instagram stories, it's like we've seen you before. And then they're like, do you do Instagram as well? And I was like, so disheartened. Like, mate, don't you know who I am? I didn't say it, but it was a reality check in the same way. It's like, in some circles you're going to be known if you provide value, but the world is so big that in other circles you're just a dude. So don't take it seriously.
I think a big example, or the best example of that at the moment, is Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
So I think I started reading his books and listening to him maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and he was this person who was just coming up with VaynerMedia.
Yes.
And now he's pretty much mainstream.
He's the guy, man. As far as digital marketing, he's the dude.
Yeah.
Like, you listen, you watch his stuff. Like, he's the guy that's killing it at the moment.
Yeah, but, it's taken him, 5 years to actually expand into that, whereas he was just in his own little niche before, talking about Snapchat and Instagram.
Yeah.
And as he started making these predictions and they started coming to fruition, it's only after he's done that he's actually sort of transcended that niche.
So we're talking about Malcolm Gladwell. It's like the tipping point. And that's the way I see it. And like, it's another explanation. Like, man, you just got to keep on chipping in and providing value. And provided that you keep on doing this and you keep on chipping in and giving much more value than, I guess what you're getting, you're going to build up. You're going to build up networks. You're going to snowball. And then one day you're just like, oh, like, how did this happen? It's like, well, dude, because you provided so much value and gave so much quality of yourself over X amount of time.
And that's exactly what Perthfitfam has done to become what it is at the moment.
not even Perthfitfam though, because I've been doing this, like I've been in the industry for 15 years. And so that we were able to do that, because of spending so much time and having so much networks. But I always try and be someone that provides value. Yeah. I want, I want to be neutral to everyone, and I just want everyone to win, and I try and make that come through as much as possible.
That's an amazing trait.
Yeah, I think it's true though. There's so much out there. If we're talking fitness, like specifically fitness, only 17.9% of the population actually have memberships in exercise. So we're all fighting over this like little part of the population, right?
Yeah.
But realistically, if everyone wins and we have that mentality, then there's 82% of the population that we can still, there's an abundance of people. Everyone can be successful if they do the right stuff. Yeah. So it's not the human nature to not have that scarcity mentality, and we all do. And it's just that conscious decision of, okay, well, how do I stop this, or how do I circumvent it, or how can I think about this from a different, paradigm? How can I have a paradigm shift to make it a win-win situation?
Yeah. And I guess since we're on it, we might as well go into how you get away from scarcity and move or think in abundance.
Yeah, I don't always.
It's hard. Super hard.
Yeah, it's super hard. It's our natural human trait to want to be the winner, the top dog, whatever. And you see someone, and you're like, they're doing well, and I feel like I'm not doing so well, and then I just laugh at myself. Okay, so I think it's just wanting to make sure that everyone, that everyone can win. Yeah. I think touching on that is a key point. I think it comes down to just being humble as well.
Yeah.
Like within yourself, knowing that you're not that important.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like your time. The way that I see this, the way that I see me and I see the industry, my time's going to come to an end.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to know who I am. And I've got this. Actually, this goes back to the baseball. I have this little window of opportunity, maybe for the next 5 or 10 years, where I have a chance to build, be a part of something, leave my legacy, and then no one's going to know who I am after that.
Okay.
And I understand that that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so I don't hold on to it too much, if that makes sense, because I know this is going to go away one day. My name won't mean anything within the industry, and I'm 100% cool with that.
Yeah.
The switch can flick at any moment, and I honestly don't care.
Most people don't have that sort of self-awareness. Is that something you've learned over time? Or?
Yeah, 100%. Once I turned 30, and it was that time. Yeah.
Okay.
Because leading up to that, man, I want to hold on to like everything so much, and it's like you want to be this success, and you want people to know how good you are, and you want to feel like you're this super. At what point do you reach a point where you actually say, "Oh yeah, I've made it"? Like you never do.
No.
You can always go further. You can always do more, and that
just becomes something that you tick off.
Yeah.
And then you start looking for something else.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Except I understand that. It's like, everything the first time you do it, and it's quite new, and it's like this achievement, and then that becomes the norm.
Yes.
And I understand this with everything. I understand, like, no matter how much wealth you build, eventually that's going to become the norm. No matter how many cool people you get to hang out with or do stuff with, that's the norm. Like, you're not that important in the big scheme of things. Like the big scheme of things, there is so much more out there, and you're just a cog in that wheel.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a depressing way of looking at stuff. I think it's quite a liberating way of looking at it, because all you're there to do is provide service.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and value.
And if you keep providing that value, it's going to work out. But do still have that 5 to 10 period, which you're trying to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Getting back to that first time, you really realised you had a purpose and something to roll with from since that 2 weeks at National Baseball.
Yeah.
I think you said you were 30 years old. What was that purpose?
So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. Like I was in, I think I was back in the fitness scene at that stage, but I was still like, what do I do? I have opportunities. Do I want to go make a whole stack of money and work in real estate or do something like that? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What's more important to me? And more than anything else, I love the industry. Like it's so inbred in me, and like hopefully people see that come through as well, because it is actually genuine. Like I just got back from Philex, the fitness expo in Sydney. Man, I just worked my ass off that whole time, but it is literally the most fun time of my life. Like, it feels like just 3 days non-stop.
Yeah.
And it literally feels like it goes in 2 seconds because I just love having that much fun. So that was the decision. I was like, no, this is what I'm going to do. You know, this is where I'm going to stay. This is where I'm going to make an impact.
And so how do you see yourself making an impact, or what was the thought back then? This is what I'm going to do to help this sort of person.
Yeah, I was with Body Science, I think, at that point in time still. So that was a supplement company that I was with for seven years in total. Like, I was with them over 2 stints.
And that is how you pretty much built your network.
Yeah.
That's definitely how I met you.
Yeah, it's how we first met. And I literally built that network by providing value, and I was just very active, and I was in so many places. And I think it just comes from having that genuine, like, authentic is probably the word, that authentic personality that you actually care. That you actually care about people, you actually care about what you do, and you actually care about making, situations, out of everything. So, yeah, the decision when I was 30 was like, no, this is the area where I want to make my impact. And it was quite liberating at that point in time. It's like, okay, cool, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
This is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is where I'm going. And at that point in time, like, the way I post stuff on social media, I troll myself more than anyone. And I quite enjoy having that position because A, it's fun. B, you can laugh at yourself. You're not taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
And then C, nobody can say anything to you that affects you because you've already probably said way more worse stuff.
Exactly.
In a fun way about yourself. And so I think it's almost a defense mechanism of having like an armor or thick skin. Like, you cannot be baffled by any trollers. At all.
It's a good trait to have that thick skin and not be affected by that and let it become a grudge that you hold against someone.
Yeah.
For me, I know I do that a lot because I was in good shape before and now being like out of shape, and actually went to the doctor to get pills for allergies because I was getting a rash.
Yeah.
And he took the stethoscope and he asked me if my lungs were okay. And he asked 3 or 4 times. I was like, "You're okay."
Yeah.
Stop asking me. He goes, "Do you have asthma?" I'm like, "No." Like, "Does your family have a history of diabetes?" I was like, "No, why?" And he's like, "You need to start exercising.
Oh.
You're at risk."
Was that recent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like usually when I'm out of shape, I'll make fun of myself before anyone else can.
Yeah, sure.
But I feel like that's something that is detrimental to me, although it gives me this tough sort of skin.
Yeah.
And I feel like safeguarded by it. It becomes something that I feel allows me to justify being out of shape.
Yeah, sure.
Is that something that you experienced with what you were doing?
Shit. Maybe you're going to make me think about that a little bit. Maybe I'm covering up something. No, not in a negative way. If I was like abusing alcohol or something, and I was kind of making a joke as a defensive mechanism about that, I think it's a different way of doing it. I think the way I've just been lighthearted about myself online. I'm not a motivational sort of person. Hey, it's not my brand. It's not who I am. Some people do that exceptionally well, where they can post motivational quotes and they pump people up. The way I see stuff is like, there is no certainties in life. Everyone goes through everyone goes through ups and downs. There's always challenges. There's no perfect situation. If you feel like you're just going to hustle and things are going to be great, then you're going to be left with a lot of disappointment. Yeah. And it's not a negative way of looking at it. It's just how it is. Like, I see so many people that they're flashing the pants. They're in and out because they feel like, all you got to do is read this book and hustle and everything's going to be sweet. And it's not. Nothing's ever sweet, like, all the time. Like, what was the thing that was saying the other day? I know Brian Tracy says it, and I've been told that many times before, but it's like, you're either in a crisis, coming out of a crisis, or you're about to go into a crisis.
It's cool.
Yeah, and it's like, it's true. Like, that's just life. You're always dealing with stuff. Never. Things are never awesome, whether it's business, personal, like, whatever. And that's why I don't post a lot of motivational sort of stuff, because it's like, hey, here's the reality. Like, you've just got to persevere. You got to have that vision, know where you're going, and just be okay to, like, persevere through it. I guess that's the way that I see things. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
It's inspiring. It's inspiring to know that you've taken that lesson from such a young age and now you're taking action on it.
Yeah.
You've taken action on it the last couple of years and things are starting to roll and pick up speed
Yeah.
come to fruition.
I think
awesome to see.
I think it's like being confident with who you are.
And
like,
I think you need to acknowledge yourself for that.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I'm just cool. Like I said, I'm that confident in my skin with who I am. Like, I think the most important thing of what I've said so far, like about me, is, I don't aspire to be anyone. Like, I don't have an idol. I don't have any idols that I look up to that I want to be like. I just am so happy with me being me, and this is who I am.
And is that something that you've always had?
No, not at all. Massively. So let's delve back. So if we're talking about my baseball fail, that's so minor. And my only lesson of that would be, if I just persevered, I probably would have had the opportunity to do something awesome that not many people would have. And you know what? I wouldn't have made the majors. I wasn't a freak. Like, I wasn't awesome, but I could have had a chance to go and do college in America or something like that and experience that not many people get the chance to do. Would have, lesson learned, you know, if you have a skill set, just convert it as much as you can within that opportunity of your life. I'm at a point now, like, and like, I guess we'll delve, I don't want to lead the interview, but we'll delve into, like, you know, my drug use and where it stemmed off and, like, you know, the issues. And for years, I'm just trying to think of how we're going to come back to this, but my trigger point was at 18, 19, I started reading a lot of personal development. Okay. And this probably stems to why I don't like doing a lot of motivational sort of stuff. Yeah. But, you know, you Think and Grow Riches, your Rich Dad, Poor Dads, you go into your seminars, like all this sort of stuff. And I was like 19 and I'm discovering all these things. And remember, I'm from like a good middle class sort of family. Yeah. But all of a sudden, what my family has isn't good anymore because I'm discovering, like, you know, all of this, I'm going to be mega rich and this is how you do it. And, you know, you're not supposed to work. You're supposed to have this business and then invest. And my parents weren't investors. You know, their investment was putting money into their super. And, you know, you're reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, say, well, that's not the way. You've got to do this and this. So I'm thinking I'm like hell freaking smart now. And then by the time I was 20, almost 21, I was in Canberra and I was like, you know, I'm just working in this supplement store. What am I doing with my life? You know, I played baseball in Perth and I remember it being this beautiful place and the best beaches and I loved the city. If you come from Canberra, man, like, I don't know if you've never been there, but Perth's amazing next to that. So I jumped on a plane. 3 weeks later, I'm on a plane. I'm living in Perth. And I'm still reading personal development. I learned so much at that point in my life. Yep. But my vision was I was going to be this mega super success. So I'm like 21. You know, I met a girl at that stage over here. You know, I'm killing it within like the work that I was doing. You know, I had a bit of a side hustle going on where my first sort of business where I was importing fake iPods from Alibaba before Alibaba was a thing. Yeah. And I was selling them back on eBay. And so it's like, you know, it's a successful little business venture. So yeah, I'm sort of entrepreneurial at this sort of stage, doing all of this stuff. And then after reading the whole Robert Kiyosaki, who's the Rich Dad, Poor Dad author, reading all of his books and like, this is it, I'm going to go into business and I'm 21. And so I ended up quitting my job, flying to America to negotiate the deals on a supplement company that I thought was going to take off and be the next big thing. And the idea was I was going to, you know, bring in this supplement shipment and I was going to be the next big distributor. I was going to be this young prodigy kid, you know, who was going to make this difference in the industry. Yeah. Now, I ended up, like, this is the learning lessons. When you're young, you're stupid. So if anyone is in their early 20s, you're stupid. Like when I say that, I say it in the you're probably enthusiastic, but you're going to have to eat shit for a while. Yes. And you're going to have to learn lessons. So anyone who's in their early 20s, don't feel bad. This is my first lesson. Don't feel bad when that stuff happens. So yeah, I won the contract for this company over 2 major companies in Australia. I won it from using a Woolies international call card and my mum's phone from home. And so also I'm like, how did I do it? Like, just, I don't know, like just enthusiastic, just kind of knew what to say and ended up winning this deal. So I imported my first little shipment of this brand. Now, this is not thinking things through. Once the stock got to the border, it got held up by customs. And then once it got held up by customs, the company which I imported from wouldn't send me the documentation that was required to import it because there was proprietary blends. So they couldn't they couldn't give out their IP, essentially. Oh, okay. So I didn't have the documentation to bring it in. So my shipment got held up within customs, which took me 3 months to get through and a lot of money to get through, within that time, because obviously it showed to the distributors I didn't know what the hell I was doing,
Yeah.
I lost that to another brand. I lost that brand to another distributor, and my idea of being this next big thing within the industry, I ended up getting it in, like kind of getting rid of it, and like had to pay a bit of it off with the fees to get it through. But my idea of being the next big thing, and this is who I was completely destroyed. That was the first breakdown of my life, proper.
Okay.
Because for me, back then, this ideal of who I was going to be didn't come true, and I was a failure.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Your ego would take most of that.
Huge. Like huge, because that was it. I was going to go over there. I was going to have this distribution business. I was so smart. I read all these books, and this is how my life was going to pan out. And it's crazy because that was the point in time where I think the first traits of me starting to drink or party heaps or use drugs, in a negative way. Yeah. I don't know if people will agree there's a positive way of doing it, but in a almost abusive way.
So. Did you move straight from that, I guess, failure or disappointment, losing that brand or that deal to another brand? Did you move straight from that disappointment into masking it with the drugs and alcohol?
Yeah, I think so, but I didn't realize it at the time. So I always partied a bit, like growing up. Like I'm a pretty not introvert, extrovert. Like I'm a pretty push the envelope sort of person with everything I did. So I always partied a little bit, whether it was smoking pot from a young age, stealing your dad's beer, that sort of stuff. Like no filter essentially, and did like the festival sort of stuff at a young age, but nothing which was like crazy, just the standard. Again, just using the word standard is just the standard stuff, But it was all kind of like fun at that stage. Once I've had this trigger in my life, and this has spent me many, many years of reflecting back and wondering why. So once I had this trigger, I probably took off the handbrake. And so, if I went out and partied, if I went out and drank, I would binge. If I went out and took drugs, there would be no off limit. I would just binge on it. Okay. Yeah, and at this stage, I'm living in Sydney. I'm living with a good friend. I'm on a really good wicket with work. So I was like 22, 24, earning way too much with excess to way too much.
So before we get to that, you were living in Perth. What pushed you to Sydney?
Because I moved back. Okay, so I was here for 12 months. Yeah. Then I decided that I was going to import this brand. Yeah. So I moved back over east so I could set up that business. So we're pretty much, I left here. Within a week, I flew to America to get the deal. I got the deal once I come back. So this is 2007. I got the deal once I come back, and I was living pretty much in Sydney from then. Okay. Yeah, so I'm 22 by this stage. Yeah. Yeah.
And was there any real motivator for you to be in Sydney? Was it just this?
My family's there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was the only person. I'm still the only person over here. Okay. Yeah, so I was the only one over here, and it was like, hey, I'm going to drop income. I'm not going to, I basically had to stay with my folks for a bit in Canberra, and then eventually, within a couple of months, kind of moved to Sydney. Yep. But I was based there.
Okay. And so you were on good money?
Yeah, so then by that stage, so let's, the products got held up. That all went under, but I had another offer, which is when I actually kicked off with Body Science.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is back in 2007. So by this stage, I'm on a really good wicket with them. Back then, the opportunity was so awesome for me. So I got a young kid, flash car, disposable income, living in Pyrmont. I lived in Darling Harbour at the top level of this apartment with my best mate, my girlfriend at the time. So we had access to whatever we wanted. So the majority of my life at that stage revolved around earning heaps of money, not being happy with who I was because I was this failure from this business, and I'm still reading these personal developments, and I'm not this super duper entrepreneur who I think that I was going to be. Yeah. But on the weekend, we would live this Wolf of Wall Street sort of lifestyle. And you're with your mate, you're egging each other on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, I guess before we get to your story, which is the main one we want to speak about, which is the drug use and the substance abuse.
Yeah.
How, looking back now, how did you deal with that disappointment, apart from using the drugs to mask it?
I think there was a lot of internal hurt.
Yeah.
But when you're a dude, actually, I shouldn't say especially because I'm not a girl, so I can't comment. But I think that your pride holds on to that stuff a lot, and I think there was definitely a lot of internal hurt because life didn't pan out at that stage how I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And you have a choice. You can either hold on to that failure, which is going to affect you in a negative way, which is what I obviously did. And my way of outseeing that was, just trying to earn more money and, partying and live like this lifestyle that, you think people that have money and stuff live, which is, going out to the places to be on the weekend and getting into that stuff. So I think that's probably, I think the overuse of that is probably the internal issue would have been that you sense that you failed.
Okay. And so your way of dealing with it was to move on to the next opportunity and try and make the most of it and to try and reclaim what you thought you were going to get with that brand deal?
No, I don't even think I was at that stage then. I just think that I just didn't like myself. Okay. Yeah, I just think I didn't like myself because I hadn't achieved what I thought I would have. And I think that's where, depressions and not caring for yourself stem from. For someone to abuse drugs, it's not the drugs that are the issue. It's what's the internal, what's going on within that person.
So do you feel like you took anything like depression? Obviously you had the self-loathing. Do you feel like you experienced anything like depression from that moment?
Yeah, I think not whilst living in Sydney. I think it was fast forward a couple of years until my first, down cycle. Yeah. And that's where I was like, okay, that's pretty dark. So I guess if I can move my story forward a little bit. So I spent 2 years in Sydney. It was 22, 24. I got to do stuff that not a lot of people got to do. It was pretty cool.
Living a good lifestyle too.
Yeah. Whenever I go back, I always go back to where I used to live, and I just, I don't know if it's nostalgia, in a positive light, but I just spent time reflecting the stuff I used to do, where I used to live, the choices that I made, and where that got me. I think it's important to do, just to not dwell in the past, but just to learn from it. And I always spend time reflecting back on that sort of stuff. So we were there for 2 years. Things weren't moving forward how I thought they were, as far as, I'm not this distribution thing. I was with a girl, we were getting ready to get engaged at that stage. So we must have been together for 4 years or something at that point in time, or 3 years. So her family was from here, and she's from a very tight Italian family. So I thought, hey, when we have kids and stuff, this is probably the place that we want to be. Plus, we love Perth. Yeah. And so we ended up moving back here and staying with her folks for a bit whilst we got set up over here. So within this time, same thing. I'm still my thing as a rep. I'm still reading personal development, all this sort of stuff. But I'm still holding on to that sense of failure from a couple of years ago. You know what I mean? I still have that sense of, you're not who you were supposed to become. Not so different to losing your hair and having to come to terms with, no, this is who you are. This is actually okay. So I'm holding on to this sense of failure, and still still partying, quite a bit. And the turn in my life was I was surrounded by quite a few influential older people at this stage that were either really wealthy, really accomplished within what they did, and it's very much within the fitness scene. And this is probably around about that 2009, I think. And within this scene, I'm getting in really good shape. I'm starting to train because I wasn't fit consistently through my life. I always would. I'd either be really fit and lean, or I just wouldn't care and I just wouldn't train for 3 months and I'd just be busy partying and stuff. I lived in the extremities for many, many years. So, I was in good shape. I'm training with these guys, and the piece of advice was, and this was the turning point for the worse for me, because I never did ice. I never did anything like that. I did what I would consider the rock star fun stuff, but I always said I'd never do it. So within this circle of influence, it was suggested, hey, if you want to get really lean, the best thing that you can do is to, get some really good speed or use ice, and this is what's going to help. And, it was, without letting on too much, like it was within a circle where I was like, okay, cool, it's just what you did. So, yeah, I ended up doing that. And that was my first experience with it. And because that becomes the norm, and that's the group that you're into, and again, like successful, how do we say, quotation mark, successful people within this group, not like what you consider methods or anything like that. And so, that's what we did. And then because we were using performance enhancers at the time, so you can't really drink, if we wanted to go out, it was like, oh, we've got this ice, why don't we have a little bit of that? And then you'd go out and you'd still drink and do stuff anyway, and there'd be ups and downs and whatever. But when you do that, like to go from someone who was such an ambitious person, and even though I had this sense of failure, was still such an ambitious person, to go from that to then start using, something like ice, like it's a massive shift. Hey,
it is.
Like,
it's a big shift. Do you think that was brought on by holding on to that sense of failure and then seeing someone know you're happy with being Brendan McCormack, but
now
seeing, you are now.
I am now. I wasn't back then.
Oh, you weren't back then. Okay, so seeing someone who is in a position that maybe you aspired to be in, did you take that on as gospel, as like something that you had to do to get yourself?
I think it was trust.
Trust.
Yeah, I think it was just like trust. Like, these are people that even if I didn't look up to them, they were people of influence or successful within. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I probably looked up to one of them at that point in time. And so you just did it. Like it's just what you did. So I was the younger one, and so definitely the more likely to be influenced at that stage in my life. So yeah, if you go from being this ambitious kid to then using ice, I can remember I'm with my partner, I'm with my girlfriend, who's my fiance at this stage at the time. Wow. Yeah.
Did she know about that?
Yeah, she did. So how do you deal with that? And so it didn't take long until we broke up.
Yeah, of course. Well, if people out there listening aren't familiar with the side effects of ice, pretty much ice will keep you up, and then you become delirious, and then I guess you start thinking people are saying, talking about you, silly little stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you become, I guess, this angry, aggressive person who's lashing out at people. Was that something you experienced?
I was on a bender and I've experienced paranoia before, but at that point in time, no. So like at that point in time, I hadn't experienced anything like that.
And was that your first time just with ice, or was that your first time with drugs in general?
What, the paranoia?
No, when you come back to Perth and you met this group.
Oh, no. I had I think the first time that I tried pills or ecstasy or anything was probably 16. First time I smoked weed was 12.
Jeez.
Yeah.
you got a head start.
Yeah. So I started quite early, except none of it that stage. I said none of it was too out of control up until that business failure, and that's when I was starting to you would definitely use a bit more, but still at that point in time, nothing that far out of control, nothing dark is probably the better way of saying it. So yeah, at this stage I start doing that. It's not going to last for too long until, you're not this guy anymore. You're not this ambitious guy. Like, what are you doing? You're smoking, injecting ice, whatever.
Wow, injecting ice.
Not actually I should clarify that. Not in the vein. So not it's subcutaneous.
Yeah.
So if anyone knows GH or insulin or any of this stuff, it's the same way to do it. But yeah, either way. So you've done that sort of stuff. You're not the same person. How could you stay with your partner who has done that, even if it's not even abusive at that stage? It's not you're having benders, you're not doing anything. You're still playing with ice.
Yeah, ice is very, very dangerous.
The worst,
yes.
The worst, by far. So we ended up breaking up, and that rattled me massive. So if my first failure was that business, my first trigger, this was easily the second trigger in my life. This was the big one, because I've got no family over here, and we moved back for her family. and her friends were my friends, and her family was my family, and it was a very kind of tight sort of circle. So overnight to have that go from you and to have to deal with this by yourself in isolation was like a massive shock for me. And this is where things unraveled massively.
Yeah, and where did this breakup lead you?
Oh, this is like where things got really bad. Like this is like, we're talking drug abuse, we're talking like, alcohol, we're talking like, like this is where things get dark. I actually had to write notes like in this to work out the time frames of when things happen.
Okay.
The worst thing.
Before we move into that, obviously you had the baseball, the 2 weeks, and then I guess you would have felt like a failure not being able to take that opportunity to play well during nationals, missing that time frame, that window.
Yeah.
And then the failure with losing the deal.
Yeah.
And obviously you said you held on to that.
Yeah.
You took it into Sydney.
Yeah.
Where you living a good lifestyle, come back to Perth, and then you have this failure because of ice. And I can imagine having that breakup because of ice, because of something you're doing that you could, in theory, just stop.
Mm.
I can imagine that you'd be harbouring a lot of, I guess, this sense of failure from that as well.
Yeah, the failure of the breakup, or
this failure of this has happened because of my actions.
Yeah,
it's not like a lack of knowing, like the brand deal was. It was something that you directly influenced.
100%. Yeah, and so you feel like basically you messed that up.
Yes, exactly, and
Heaps.
A lot of self-loathing because of it.
Heaps, like chronically bad.
And how did you view yourself at that point?
The worst.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing to deal with. Whenever I see anyone break up now, it like tears me apart. Like whether it's a friend, even if they're not friends, but there's someone that I know that's been in a relationship for a long time, and they break up. It crushes me because that was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with. And I know what I went through. And a lot of it was like self-loathing. Like, I can't believe that you messed this up. Like, this is someone that you spend 5 years with. You're engaged. Like, your wedding's sort of planned out. All this sort of stuff. And you're like best friends, like essentially. Yeah. And to have that, and then to actually, something to explain like about myself back then. I was so concerned with being wealthy and making money and being this guy that I never understood the concept that you had to work on a relationship. I thought it just happened. And I think this comes with maturity too, because I come from a really good family. Like my parents don't share much with me. Like if they're going through issues, and I don't think that this is the best way of doing stuff because it painted probably a distorted reality to me. Yeah. Thinking that stuff just happens. But again, this comes with maturity. But I come from a really good family. None of my aunties and uncles at that stage have ever gone through divorce. I've never seen this or known what it's like. Yeah. And so I just assumed that everything was okay. So whenever I'm out with these personal development seminars or whatever, or I was just so concerned about making money. I'm not concerned about working on a relationship. Like, that's cool. Like, we've got this sorted. Yeah. And because I never did, and because I never plugged into it, and then all of a sudden, I started doing something, chronically shit, is in smoking eyes, then it just broke down overnight, which was a reality shock. Because my reality is that, that stuff just happens. It should never break down. Everything's going to be okay.
And was that, it just happens as long as you have money?
Or? I don't think it was as long as you have money. I just think it just happens. Okay. Yeah, like these breakups, they just don't happen. Like, bad relationships, they just don't happen. You know what I mean? That depends on how you get brought up as well. Like that was just my reality.
Okay. And so you're going through this stage of self-loathing. You said you really didn't like yourself at that point of the breakup. Yeah. Did you want to walk us through what happens from there?
Yeah, so I reckon that this is a process of... Things got dark, especially for 6 months. Like, that's like, binging on the weekend, no handbrake, doing a lot of, out partying at that stage. I actually left Body Science the week that we broke up too, and I started a new job within the property market, and I was there for 2 years. In that scene, there tends to be a lot of drugs. If the best way to paint the picture is Wolf of Wall Street. If anyone's seen Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
That's very much the culture that is bred into that sort of scene. So lots of money, fast lifestyles, work 24/7, but you know, there's a lot of coke, there's a lot of this sort of stuff floating around that sort of scene. You know, and then on top of that, my mates that are like doing ice and stuff. I've just gone through a breakup. I've got no family here. A lot of the stuff I can do is in isolation without even people realizing.
Well,
it's a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah.
I'm hating myself, you know, like, yeah, like that's proper dark, like proper depression. When you can do it in isolation without even anyone knowing, you can put on a face in public, but what happens at home is like completely different.
Well, it's usually when you are doing it in isolation, it's because you know you shouldn't be doing it. You're ashamed of it, but you need it to mask whatever it is you're going through.
Yeah, 100%. So that was really dark throughout that stage. Now, let's say it's about 6 months in. I think it was around about my birthday. So I'm all this happened at the start of the year. Yeah. My birthday's in June. So it was about 6 months in of just going like this.
Wow.
And I was on a bender. It was a couple of days. And, you know, this is ice. This is a whole bunch of stuff that we've used this day. And all of a sudden, it just dawned on me, like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? This isn't you. And again, it comes back to the bald thing. This is who I think I am, then this isn't me, and then you understand it, and then you come to terms, and it's okay. So I was halfway through this bender, and all of a sudden I just break down. I went into a room by myself, and I just started crying. I just broke down. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't me. This isn't what I saw myself as. How did I get here, sort of thing. And I just called up my parents, and it must have been like, you know, they're in Canberra, I'm in Perth, so it must have been like 3 or 4 in the morning their time. And I just called them up and like just broke down crying, and I was like, guys, like, you know, I'm off my face at the moment. Yeah. This is the situation. I need to get out of here. If I don't get out of here, I'm not going to stop. So 2 days later, I was on a plane. You know, I had a chance to come down, recover, get the stuff out of my system, and then 2 days later, I was on a plane to Canberra to go see my parents. And
what age was this? Sorry.
Sort of been 26. 26, 26. So the year after, so 2010 is when I switched, 2011, so yeah, it would have been 26 or nearing to. It might have just been before my 26th birthday.
I know it seems trivial to ask an age for this sort of story, but just for people who are listening, who are around that similar age, who are experiencing something.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like we were touching on it. You don't know who you are at that age. If you know who you are at that age and you have self-awareness and you're comfortable, like, I take my hat off to you, hey, but most people don't, so don't be ashamed. So yeah, I'm 26. I've gone back on a plane, or just about to turn 26. I'm on a plane. And I'm like, I just got to restart, you know, I just got to reset. I've just got to restart my life. I've got to get in a positive mind frame. So I started reading, I think it was a Zig Ziglar book, or something similar. I read a lot of personal development through this time, which is bizarre. You know, you're reading personal development and you're smashing down ice. So, yeah it's pretty contradictory. So, yeah, I'm on the plane, I'm reading it. And in the book, it kept on talking about, like, this Christian lifestyle. Yeah. Now, I was never brought up in church. You know, I went to, like, you know, Easters and Christmas, but I didn't really understand it. I never read the Bible. I didn't have an understanding of really religion, but it interested me, and I was like, I'm going to look into this one day to work out what it all is. You know, I thought the Da Vinci Code was real. So, you know, the story about how, like, I think he was having, it turns out that Jesus was actually with Mary, and, you know, they were going to have a kid, and that was the Holy Grail. I was like, oh yeah, cool, they sorted it out. Good job, science. that's like my barrier to entry for religion. So, anyway, I highlighted it, and I went to Canberra, and I, you know, spent a week with my parents, like, you know, basically just debriefing them, because they're going through hell. They knew I was using drugs, and they were going through hell, like, throughout this whole period. And that kind of reached its pinnacle. So I went and saw a psychologist there. Okay. Now,
was this of your own choosing? Or
was it's my parents. Okay. Yeah. So they're like, yeah, you know, you got to go see someone. And I went with my mum. Okay. So I'm seeing this psychologist, you know, and I haven't admitted that I've got issues at this stage. Okay. I'm not at that stage within the 12 steps where it's, hey, I'm a fuck up and I need help. I'm not at that stage yet. Yeah. I'm at the stage of, no, I'm still this personal development person who's going this way, but I just need to get a handle on this stuff. Yep. So anyway, I went and saw him, and then can you imagine sitting in the room with your mum telling her everything?
No, like I cannot.
It's crazy, man. Like, they'll probably listen to this, and that was one of the hardest things, is actually just opening him up to this guy, but with having my mum sitting there and just seeing her break down. And it's like, that's your baby.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I love my dog. Like, my dog is like my son, and I couldn't imagine something I couldn't imagine my dog going through something so bad.
Okay.
And
obviously for your mum, it would feel like she's failed, like most parents who go through something like this.
Possibly, but we've never spoke about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so possibly. But to sit there and like have your baby just divulge everything that you've been doing, like, she would have been shattered. So that was like a bit of a shock for me. So anyway, I decided I've got to get my life sorted out. I'm back to Perth, so I've jumped on a plane.
Okay, so before we get to jumping on a plane back to Perth, did you just have the one psychology session?
Yeah, at that stage.
Okay, and did you get anything out of that, or were you still in this self-defense mode? I'm going to be this wealthy.
I had a cousin that was a junkie, and I look back at this now and I find it funny. I had a cousin, sorry, who was a drug addict. He's I think reformed now.
Okay.
And this is years and years ago.
Yeah.
And I compared myself to him.
Okay.
In the meeting. And I said, you know how I said I wasn't ready to admit it? I was like, no, I'm still this personal development guy. I'm still going to be the success. I was like, yeah, but I don't do it like he did. And you can't be like that. Yeah, because you're not taking ownership.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I do it, but I'm not as bad as this guy, so I'm not an addict.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't be like that.
Yeah.
At all. So that's what I took out of that meeting years later. And I still spend a lot of time reflecting on this stuff now.
And was there any barrier to going to psychology? A lot of people, I guess they feel like if you are going to psychology, then you're broken, then you are a failure. Was that something that you thought of?
Nah, it was so quick, and I was so broken that night, like that morning, that early morning on that phone call. I was okay with that. I just wanted to go see my parents. I just didn't want to OD. Yeah. Essentially, that was the mind state I was in. Yeah, I just wanted to clean myself up, and I didn't want to OD. So yeah, I was okay to go catch up with this guy. But it's funny because he smoked, and remember, I'm a fitness guy. Like, still, I've been in the fitness industry. I'm this fitness guy still, and I questioned him about him smoking and the hypocrisy, and not in a negative way, but like just brought it up as a joke. And I'm like, because he said, well, why do you use it if you're not addicted to it? And I looked at him and I looked at the smokes and I said, well, why do you smoke if you know it's bad for you? How's that for defensive though?
Yeah. Still a lot of ego.
Yeah, massively. Like, huge. And I look, and it's funny because it's true, but at the same time, it's like, well, you're trying to justify what you're doing by pulling out their weakness.
Do you feel that's because you still thought of yourself as this guy who was this self-improvement,
massive,
gonna be wealthy,
yeah. I
know I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I'm doing
I can fix it. I can sort it. Yeah, that's like, I think if anyone's done 12 steps, that's one of the entries. That's one of the blockages. You need to admit that you're powerless to it. Yeah. And until you do that, you're gonna until you admit, hey, listen, if I do this, I'm a mess. Like, I just cannot do it. I'm powerless to this. So yeah, you need to. I was not in a stage to admit that. That's for sure. It was like, I can get a control on this.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of at that stage within the cycle.
So, on this flight to Perth,
did you
want to walk us from there?
Yeah, sure. So I don't remember the flight back, but this is a key point in my life. So there was a friend of mine who had just got back from Mount Everest. And it's great. I haven't told this story for ages. So she just got back. She was a client of mine from the Body Science Days. And I saw that she'd just come back. And I'm like, hit her up with a message. Hey, how's Everest? Blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, just touching base, because it's a cool thing. Like, you've just climbed a base camp of Everest.
Of course.
Yeah, it's epic. And she was a church, so she was from church. And anyway, I was like, oh, you want to catch up, have coffees. And I hadn't seen her for a while, so I'm like, yeah, okay, not a problem. Now, she's just noticed that I'm no longer engaged on Facebook because all of this stuff has kind of gone through, and, no one saw that coming. And so we ended up having coffee, and I don't know why, but I literally just spilled the beans about everything, what I had been doing, why I went back to Canberra, just everything. And at coffee, she was like, hey, you ever thought of, maybe just come to church, come check it out? And again, so I've given you like the insight into my really just understanding my entry level, but then reading this book and highlighting it. And I was like, I had nothing to lose. I was very lonely, still depression, still trying to keep control of stuff. Still trying to stay clean. at this stage. But definitely dealing with a lot of mental hurt. And I'm like, yeah, well, sure, not a problem. So I went to church. I went to church on like a Friday night, and it was this place, and it was not what I was expecting whatsoever. So if anyone's listening, I was thinking I was going to go to a cathedral with like this priest and this sort of stuff. And if the people listening haven't heard of Hillsong, just Google Hillsong, and it's like this kind of not new age church, because that makes it sound like a cult.
It is modern though.
It's very modern. Yeah, modern's a better word.
A lot of like R&B and hip hop singers.
Yeah. There's guys rapping on stage, and it's just like this. It was lots of lights,
energetic and vibrant.
Great energy, and then like this preaching and these messages, and there's a lot of this stuff that I've kind of heard in this personal development stuff that I've done over the years. But it was very like a wholesome sort of, everyone was happy. It was quite a big sort of place, and so that was the beginnings of my Christian journey. So I kept on going back because it was the place which was sort of keeping me clean. I'd go there on a Friday night instead of getting banged up. Okay. It gave me people to speak to outside of work. Remember, I've got no family. All my friends have disappeared. So my work friends are my friends who like to party hard. So I'm trying to kind of stay out of this, and I'm doing my best. I'm not going to 12 steps. I'm not doing anything. I'm just trying to do this stuff. And I ended up striking up like a really good relationship with the at that stage youth pastor who became my best friend. And that was the place that really saved me at this point in my life. And I was still struggling with stuff. Like if anyone's ever going through like a rehab or a 12-step, or they're trying to get off drugs, you're going to lapse. Like it happens, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, you're going to lapse back into it. And, you abstain for so long, or you abstain for a period, and then when you relapse, and then you have a guilt, and then you go through the shame sort of stuff. So I was still dealing with that, but I was consciously trying to become better.
Okay. So you were still taking drugs every so often?
Yeah, and it's like that no willpower.
Yeah.
It was like, I love them. Hey, and there's no other way of saying it. Like, I love the feeling of drugs.
Yeah.
It was one of the most exciting feelings of my life. And when you're at a party or whatever, and you're sober and stuff, it's like, no, I'm not going to do this. It's fine. As soon as you have one drink, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I feel pretty at ease. I might have another drink. If I had a couple of drinks, next thing there's a bit of Coke there, there's a bit of something, and it's like you've got no willpower to it. It's like, oh, okay, I'll do that. The next thing you know, you've just had a big night, and it's like, I can't believe I just did that. I'm a failure. Like you go through these cycles if you do it like that. And yeah, I think that still stemmed from the failure of that business. The girlfriend breaking up, still being so hurt in that area, that this is the cycle that I lived in for about the next probably 3 years.
Wow, that's a long time to go through
that. Yeah, it's crazy. Hey, so let's say that's about 3 years. But I'm getting more ingrained with church. I'm learning more about this stuff. I'm definitely improving.
Yep.
Like the times are becoming longer. My relationship, my friendship with the pastor was like, I don't think I've had a couple of mentors and stuff, like as far as like really close friends, but he was like a real brotherly sort of friend, like just a really strong bond, like real brotherly sort of bond.
So you had all this hurt and you felt a brotherly bond with him.
Yeah.
You opened up to your friend who reached out to you to meet up.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah.
Was he someone that you found yourself opening up to
and
sharing a lot of this hurt?
At that stage, yeah. So she was a she. She was a she, the one that got back from Everest.
Yep.
But so my friend, so the youth pastor, so he was someone who really guided me. And and when I messed up, I would go see him, and like he would lay it down, and like not purposely, but like it'd be, hey, like this is the situation, like I need help, sort of thing. And he was definitely guided me through that stage, and throughout all of this, I was becoming more ingrained in that church and becoming a youth leader and becoming all of these sorts of things as I was improving.
Yep.
So I kind of had like this 180 degree of life, I guess.
And so from that, if we're going back a little bit, just to put it in context, going back to that moment where you broke down to your parents on the phone, was that the first time you really opened up about any hurt and any desire to move forward?
Yeah, I think that was like the first, I need to stop this.
Yeah. And so do you think that influenced you going forward, being able to open up like you did to your friend who did Everest and all this?
Massively, because I knew I wanted to make a change.
Okay.
Yeah, and it all progressed, like it all sort of progressed from there.
And so, getting back to where you were with taking on the leadership role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a natural leader. Like no matter what industry I chose to jump in or whatever I would choose to do, I would eventually become in a position of leadership. It's just how things gravitate, and that's self-awareness. It's not arrogance, but it's self-awareness, and a lot of that stems back to that providing value and providing service, and that genuine authenticity for it. So it's just how things happen. So because of that natural charisma or that natural authenticity, that's how I kind of progressed through into like that leadership role. Now, most people don't know, but I did Bible college for 2 years. So at this stage, I've started to have success at work. I'm churning some big bucks. And then I made a decision. I was going to leave this job and just do Bible college for 2 years. So I did. But prior to that, I was still dealing with stuff, like massively. And one thing which I want to point out about being able to mask things. So I was still dealing with depression, or occasionally I was still dealing with a relapse. Or sorry, I won't say a relapse because that's a full relapse, but like a lapse, which is if you mess up once or something. But I remember I went through this stage of actually going through a relapse. But the point of the story which I want to tell is I was at work. I was working for a builder at this stage for these 2 years, and one of the guys who was there, he pulled me up and he's like, "Man, what I love about you is that you're always happy, you're always smiling, you're always so energetic, and you bring such a positive vibe." He's like, 1 in 3 guys are going through depression or they're really upset, so it's really fresh to be able to see your personality. And I almost fucking cried because behind the scenes I was so depressed. I'd go home and I hated myself. And I would still lapse occasionally on drugs or alcohol, or I was still going through these stages. So to this guy and to these people around me, they're thinking everything's okay. But man, I was dying inside. Hey, for this, I was crushed. Hey, and that's the trap, and that's the issue. When you see someone like me who commits suicide, and people are like, "I never saw it," and it's like, man, we're the ones that can put on a smiley face, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of stuff happening, and you would never know.
And I feel like someone like you who is so extrovert and outgoing, because you do have this persona that people look to, and this person that you're known as, it's almost harder for people like you to open up because you do have this persona to live up to. Yeah. And so do you think that was a barrier at all?
Yeah, I just don't think that I spoke about it much or there's definitely a lot going on at that stage. But that was a real eye-opener that he said that. And I'm thinking, dude, out of anyone in this group, I'm probably the one who's more than likely to kill themselves right now. Yeah. Yeah, and no one would pick it.
And is that something you said? Or
not to him, no. Hell no. It's just a thought, just an event which I held on to and I think about quite a lot. So, we're seeing, Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, he killed himself. Chris Cornell, all around the same sort of time. These things shock me and these things still upset me. Obviously they should upset you, but they upset me because these are people that have it, what we would perceive to be everything and anything, and then they're the ones that kill themselves. Yeah. And that's a concern which I had for myself. So just before I went to Bible college, because I think at this stage, I think I had actually gone through a relapse where I made some bad decisions, and I think I was actually smoking a bit of ice again. Wow. Yeah, and I tried to stop. Tried to stop, and I just seem to end up in these loops or these parties or these work things, and it's not who I wanted to be, not what I wanted to be doing, and I was just struggling so hard, just before the lead up into going, and this was a really dark point for me, where one night, and I was just I just can't deal with this anymore, and I ended up getting 13 ecstasy pills, and I ate them all. Yeah.
In the one go.
Yeah. And that was Like, I just had enough, and I couldn't go through this cycle of depression again.
Okay.
I couldn't deal with stuff. Like, the thing that kept me alive through all of this, I truly believe, is my dog. Yeah, because I was the only person here. He was like my son. Like, and still now, he's what I probably care for more than anything. And, like, it was this sense of nobody could take care of him like me. And I couldn't imagine leaving him in the house for a few days whilst no family here, who's going to come and find me.
Yeah.
And my fear was that something would happen to him. Except this night, I was like, I can't deal with this cycle again.
Okay.
So I ate 13 pills. I ended up like drinking a bunch. I ate 13 pills in one hit.
That's insane.
That's
crazy.
Yeah, and that was like, whatever happens, happens. If I go, I go. If I survive, thank you, God. Remember, I'm like, in church at this point in time. Thank you, God. Like, I'll believe in you, sort of thing. It was really weird because I got a cab to go pick him up, and on the way back, and I had a couple of drinks at that stage, and the guy that was driving the cab, I was actually going to bring the book to show you, but I left it at home, and I kept this book. He was an ex-alcoholic himself,
Wow.
and when he dropped me off, because we were talking about church, because he had like a Jesus thing in his taxi, and we ended up just opening them up, and I told him who I was and what I was doing, like who I was and what I did, and I was probably just talking shit. And when he dropped me off, he's like, "Hey man, I've got a book for you. Like, I think that you need it."
Wow.
And he put his number in it, and it was his book that he wrote. And he used to drive a cab, and anyone who was like distressed or whatever, he would just pray for him, and he would give them this book about his life journey. Yeah, and it was funny because that was the night that I then ate all the pills, and I started reading this book like after I bunched these pills, and then whatever happened, passed out, whatever. Woke up like so swollen the next day. I couldn't sleep properly for 3 days because my brain felt like it was going to explode. I'm lucky I didn't die, which was the purpose.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky I didn't actually do chronic brain damage at that stage.
So no one found you when you'd passed out? You just woke up?
Nah, I just woke up.
Well,
Woke up and then realised what I had done, and I was like, you cry.
Yeah.
You realise, you're like, what am I doing with my life? You cry a lot. You hug your dog a lot, and you realise that you need like a lot of help at that stage. I didn't tell anyone about that. No one knew about that except for the guy that gave me that book.
really?
Yeah, at that stage. Yeah, that was a real battle that night. Hey, yeah, that was a real battle. So that wasn't long before I actually left and went to Bible college. And remember, I could put on a face really well.
Yeah.
So by the time that I healed up and was able to come down, and the inflammation from my face was able to go, because I was real puffy in the cheeks from all the chemicals in my body, I was able to then go out and put on a face again. So yeah, there was no need for me to tell anyone about that.
And just before we go further, what do you feel it was specifically that you were running away from?
I don't know if it was running away. If anyone's gone through depression and the cycles of it, because depression doesn't last all the time.
Yeah.
When you have it, you go through, and it comes on subtly, and you don't even know it. Like, it's so real. It's kind of like you're hypnotized.
Yeah.
And the way that I explain it to people is, it's like you're running through a dark tunnel with a parachute strapped to your back with no light at the end of the tunnel. It's hard. It's a hard slog. And mentally, to try and get out of it, it's chronic until you admit, hey, there's something, I need to tell someone there's something not right at the moment.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do that, you can start to work yourself through it. I didn't have the skill set to do that back then. And I was remember, I'm still living by myself at this stage. I'm dealing with stuff in isolation, which is the worst place to ever be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I was running. I was still hurt from relationship stuff.
Okay. Maybe running's not the best word. Maybe escaping.
Yeah, I was definitely escaping from those. I still think it stemmed from both those two. The feeling of failure, and the feeling that you weren't where you were supposed to be. Yeah.
So were you still comparing yourself to others at this stage?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, huge. Like, even guys that I worked with, some of them were clocking like $500,000 a year, and driving certain cars, and all this sort of stuff. And I was definitely on the mend for the better. Mentally, like being in that church sort of circle and that sort of group, like changed my life dramatically. That's the word I'm looking for. It changed it, and it's helped me, and it really saved me. Except for that night, which, let's face it, could have gone either way.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. Imagine if it did. Yeah, so that was a bit of a shock. So that's a real eye opener. But then I started like I said, I've recovered. I'm able to get back into life.
Yeah.
Not long after I moved in with my mate, so the pastor at that point in time. So me and him moved in together, which saved me. Like literally, he didn't know about any of this at this stage. Like I didn't tell anyone about any of this. So as far as he's concerned, everything's all good. But we moved in together. Now the power of like your connections, your community makes a huge difference to you and who you are. So I didn't drink or do drugs or anything the whole time that I lived in this house. And it wasn't just him. Like we lived with other guys that were from this church circle where this stuff just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it was so easy for me not to do.
Really?
Man, I was clean as.
So it
not at all.
So you just went cold turkey?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Not at all. Nothing.
That's amazing.
The closest thing was I remember I don't know if you remember the old pre-workouts and stuff that used to be around like Jacked and
like the DMAA.
So he had a pure form of DMAA in the house.
Yeah.
And once I got it, because it's over the counter, it's just DMAA, and I had a serve. And for me, that was the equivalent of taking meth. It was pretty much the same.
Wow.
And I had been clean for maybe a year at this stage, and then I had a serving of it, and it was almost identical for me smoking rock in the gym. And I was like, and of course, great feeling. I'm like, next thing you know, I need it the next day. He found out that I obviously had this addictive pattern and that I started using this thing on the daily. And he was like crying, like just in tears. And he's like, man, I got to throw him out. And it's like that addictive sort of nature. Hey, but yeah, we didn't have alcohol in the house. It was a very wholesome sort of environment. He actually lived in Japan for 12 months. For 12 months of that. Except the guys that I was still around, it was a very supportive. It was an easy place not to do anything. It was an easy place to live what I would say a very successful life.
Okay, so coming from this place where you're supposed to be the self-improvement, successful guy who's an extrovert who has to keep up that persona, going to somewhere like this, was it a safe environment where you could be yourself and open up and share what you were actually going through, or did you still have to keep this front?
You can open up and share. You can definitely open up and share. I wouldn't say it was an environment where I could be myself, but it was a very safe environment.
Okay.
So safe from doing bad stuff.
Yeah.
That's what it was very, very safe from. But I think because, I'm not actually a religious person.
Yeah.
So, but back then, my life had changed. This whole faith, this whole circle, the friends had really saved me at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later on where I really started asking questions. And the biggest thing for me was, so for those who are listening, to set it up, no, I'm not, I'm like a believer, I'm not a religious person. I still actually do Bible studies every day.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually have, do, what are they called? I'll come back to it. It's called a plan. I have a reading plan, devotion, daily devotion is what it's called. So I actually still do that now.
And is that because of the teachings related to, I guess, whatever religion it was, or is that because of how you can implement it in your life?
Correct. Yeah. So I still think that you can become a better human being by reading these things.
Yes.
Well, no matter what your beliefs are, I still think that they can make you a better person.
Well, and that's something I've just taken on because I've been against religion my whole life.
Yes.
I've had a father who loved religion and a mother who was just absolutely not going to church at all.
That's a hard mix.
And I've been like that my whole life, but now I'm starting to see, especially reading books like Think and Grow Rich,
Correct,
or the Master Key System, you start to see that this whatever man soweth, that shall he also reap.
Yeah.
All these quotes and all these teachings and sayings.
They're all biblical.
Yeah, they're all teachings that come down through these self-improvement books that allow you to become the best version of yourself.
Correct.
And that's what I see religion as now.
Yes. And that was me. And that was basically it still is my thought patterns, because my thought pattern then was, well, I may as well go to the source.
Yeah.
If all the books I'm reading, if it is all biblical stuff, why not just go to the source? Now, I'm not a religious person now. The reason why is if we're talking about, gay rights, if we're talking about, being Muslim and Islam, whatever it is, whatever your beliefs are, I got to a point where I was in a leadership role where I could have, become prominent leader. I'm a good speaker, and it's very easy to have that charisma and go places. And I had to sit down and ask myself, is this really what I believe in to build my life on it as a career, as a life, as everything? And do I believe in it enough to tell my Muslim friend that they're wrong and I'm right? And when I couldn't answer that, that's when I went, you know what? Like, I can't identify that strongly as this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my stance for people, just so they know where I'm at now. Now, yeah, saying that, obviously, I think there's so much value, and I think that if you do live that lifestyle and you have the safety of the house or the house of God, or I think that you can quite easily live a very happy, fulfilling, and successful life that you can't find elsewhere. Also, my thoughts on that, so it's kind of contradictory. So it's sort of like, well, why don't you go there if that's what your belief is? And it's like, well, it's the dogma.
Yeah, you'd feel like you can do it without this believing in a higher purpose or an existential.
Yeah, I feel like that you could not be part of a church without having that, because essentially it is a place of worship. And when when you're a believer, like, this is your belief. Like, you believe this more. Like, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
And if you're a non-believer there, I would feel like it'd be very disrespectful if you're plugging into this thing without sharing and being a part of it. I feel like you'd be taking away from people for a personal benefit.
So, again, I guess that's going back to this authenticity that you have.
And I'm open, man. Like, I still catch up with my mate now, and I'm open. I told him this stuff, like, as far as, like, I was quite open about, my belief and what I think. And I said, man, I'd love to catch up with you as, like, for me, as a life coach, to be able to get stuff off my chest, because my position at the moment is, remember, I'm in the fitness scene. I kind of know everyone, like, this is on my scene. It could be a chance to slip up a bit in life. And if I have someone that I can speak to, like, about my more personal life and my spiritual life, then that puts me in a good position. So yeah, we've had these chats, definitely. I think in the scheme of things, I've gone through Bible college. I've spent basically 2 years of being completely clean or whatever. Very, very easy to do. I was helping mentor guys at a recovery house, go through all of this stuff. That was probably the most fulfilling stage in my life.
I can imagine.
I'm earning no money at this stage, man. I'm in Bible college. I'm living off mee goreng noodles.
Yeah.
So I've come from having money to, like, not having money. I've come from mee goreng noodles. Like, you're doing whatever I want, Coke parties, whatever, to living off mee goreng noodles. And it was cool. Like, I don't mind. All of that doesn't matter. So this guy who wanted to be this super successful money guy to go through a lesson of where, I remember a day I had to borrow 50 cents off a friend to actually get some noodles to eat. And I was like, dude, what happened, man? I swear you used to have like 30 grand just like sitting there. Now it's like, you've used that to pay to get through this. But what it did is it pulled the power of money away from me. Yep. So even now, I actually don't care. Like, whatever. I think there's a process and there's strategies to put in place for that side of stuff. But I actually am not governed by money or material stuff at all. Like, not even remotely.
I think that relates back to something, a test that Tim Ferriss does.
With the beans?
Quite often,
beans and rice?
Where he's, instead of living in the scarcity mindset where you're afraid of losing everything,
yes,
he tests living with little, very little.
Yeah.
On a real strict diet, like he said, beans and rice.
Beans and rice for a week.
Yeah. Just so he's used to that, and so he knows that if something happens and he loses everything, he's going to be just fine.
Always.
On beans and rice. And is that something that you feel you went through with that?
Huge. And I put myself through it quite a bit. I love that process. So that's actually, like I said, I do Bible studies every day.
Yeah.
So, I did diets last year where I went basically 12 months through 4 different kinds of extreme dieting. And I basically did it as a way of finding out what all these diets actually do. And I had like blood tests, DEXA scans, tracked everything. And it was great to find out all this stuff, but it was epic for my own personal development, and it changed me as a person more than anything. So this year I was like, how can I do that? And I wanted to do it with religion. So I started to delve into it, and you've got to be careful, because if you're seeking let's say a Muslim mentor on this, it becomes very real for them that God's tapping on your shoulder, and this is where it can become dangerous, because it's kind of like you're playing this game with them. Yeah,
yes.
And I actually had that experience at the start of the year when I was looking into it, asking questions, and I went, oh, actually, this is going to become a little bit too personal with people. But but what I'm getting to is the Tim Ferriss thing. So that's a Stoic philosophy.
Yeah.
That's going to be my next. one, so I'm going to go through all the Stoic philosophy. Yeah, and just to see what I get out of it as a person and how that affects my life and my opinion of the world. And we all have an operating system, no different to an iPhone. And if you put this stuff into your body, into your soul, into your mind, that's going to change your operating system and how it works. And so this is my thing for this year of personal discovery about how do these different religions and beliefs change my operating system.
Wow, that's a big task. That's a big project.
Yeah, it's just this. Like, it just makes. I feel it grows you as a person. It gives you a better self-awareness.
It's self-awareness, but then you start to have empathy for the people in those other religions, because you understand how they think and you understand their barriers to accepting what you think.
Huge.
It's sort of breaking down those barriers.
Yeah, and that was when I got to that point where I said I could no longer identify, because I always try to have empathy, which comes with authenticity, and I always try and understand where the other person's coming from. And there's a definite reason why people are coming from their point.
Yeah.
I just want to find out what that is. It's just cool to learn stuff and just have life experience, I think, too. So yeah, going clean. Now, I was helping guys out with like their own rehab and whatever. So this is, I must be about 29. I kind of moved out. My mate got married, and so I moved into a place myself. And I had these guys that had just come out of rehab living with me, and I'm strong at this stage. Like, I'm not stuffing up. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like, now I'm on my own, and I'm helping coach these guys through it, which was great for about 6 months. But when you start seeing guys like this start relapsing, it's hard, man. And they weren't like, I was a personal development, I was a guy that would do a lot of study. I was always trying to improve, although I had my shortcomings.
Yeah. These
are guys where that's not a concept, really broken backgrounds. Like, there's a lot of issues there. No life skills, no ability to clean. Like it was a lot to deal with. And I went through it, like these guys going through relapses within the house, and seeing this stuff was like a shock for me and really, really hard to deal with.
And how was that hard to deal with? Was that making you want to relapse yourself? Or
I did.
You did, okay.
Yeah, when they were gone. Like I had to boot them out. And it was such a shock to see, like, oh, wow, maybe things aren't all roses. And so, I never ice. Like, I've never used ice since I decided to stop. But even not even drugs at that stage, really. Okay. It was primarily just like alcohol at home.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would be like, because me and my closest friend, we actually had a falling out at that stage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that because of that situation?
No. Nah, it was another situation. But it's stupid now, because we were really, really tired, and it's one of those things that you shouldn't let happen, but it happens.
Yeah.
And it was funny because how I dealt with our breakup of friendship was almost very similar to how I dealt with the breakup of my relationship with my ex-fiance, just not to the extremes with ice. So, things would be going well. I'd still be high productive at work. I'd still be doing everything, and everyone would be saying all good shit. But then, in my emptiness at home, and not every night, but, there would be emptinesses where I would just drink,
just
or
to
whatever.
fill the void.
Just to fill the void, yeah.
Okay. And I guess if we're going back to you having this leadership role, helping these guys through, you said you had this fulfillment. You're at about 29 now, and you said you found what you think is your purpose at 30.
Yeah.
Did this fulfillment, putting other people first, contribute to you finding that purpose at 30?
I learnt a lot within that stage. Yeah, I learned a lot, and that shaped a big part of who I was. Throughout all of this story so far, I was always a very similar person. I believe I was always caring. I was always extroverted, but I was still that same guy to a degree. Yeah. I think that definitely the years that I spent so integrated in church and Bible college definitely chiseled me and shaped me.
Yeah.
Which I'm so grateful for, massively, and it really saved my life at that point in time. I just through that stage, I dealt with it with alcohol, and it's funny because I look back now, and I don't hate myself for it, and this is only recently. Like this is like end of last year sort of stuff.
For all of it?
Any
or
of
just
it.
Okay.
None of it. Because if anyone else was in their shoes, it was in the same shoes, they probably would have dealt with it the same way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you went through like traumatic experiences. Like you didn't realize, like, oh yeah, you had a breakup, whatever. And that's why these things happen. You had a breakup, whatever. Man, I didn't realize that took me 5 years until I could date my current girlfriend.
Well, I don't think we realise when we go through something like that, where we mess up and we lose someone we love,
Yeah.
that you take on this burden of feeling like you're not good enough, and that affects how you go into the next relationship, whether that's
Fear.
romantic or friendship.
It's crazy, man. Like through fear. If I ever tried to date someone, I reckon for 3.5 years, I just couldn't even consider it. Like it felt like I was cheating on my girlfriend still. And like I held on to it for so long.
Yeah.
And then even when I tried to start dating again, there was like fear or like things will get awkward or what if things don't work out? There's always like, what if things don't work out?
So this fear that you're gonna mess up again.
Yeah. Yeah. What if I stuff up? What if we break up? What if I need to go through that pain again? Like I can't deal with that again.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like, my 30th birthday. I went to Fiji with my folks. I don't get to see my family much because they're in Canberra.
Yeah.
I've got a mixture of 4 nephews and nieces. My sister and her husband have. So all of us went to Fiji, and I'm just sitting there, and it dawned on me. I was like, how am I going to do with my 30th leading up to it? And I dealt with it. And I was like, you know what? I love the fitness industry. This is who I am. This is what I love. I love to do it. I hadn't gone through a lot of personal reflection at that stage, but that was when I was comfortable with who I am. And that's when things started taking off for me, like through social media and through being that guy. Because I was always that guy, but then it really started to take off. Because I didn't care what people thought. If I wanted to post something funny, if I wanted to post something with budgie smugglers or whatever, or all these things that built me up to make me who I am now on the social side of things, I was comfortable with doing that. I knew that some people would like it, some people wouldn't, but I was comfortable with who I am. Essentially, I do what I think is funny or what I think is cool, and everyone else is along for the journey.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around.
That's cool.
Yeah, because I figure if I like it, surely there's other people out there that will. You don't always do. You look back and you go, that's a bit stupid sometimes. But that's when I reached that point where I was like, comfortable with that.
So were you comfortable with the fact that you weren't yet this guy who was successful?
It was okay because church changed me.
Yep.
So money didn't have control anymore.
And were you okay with or content with all the mistakes you had made in the past?
No.
No, okay.
Nah, not that. And that's been more of a recent thing, which I've like delved into. Because my big thing now is just like personal discovery and like, knowing who you are and having understanding and like just the ability to forgive yourself. So this can go like a little bit left field now.
Yeah, of course.
So last year I went through 12 months, like I said, these 12 months of dieting.
Yeah.
And where I went through all these cult diets because I wanted, from the fitness world, we hear all this contradictory information, and I genuinely.
What were the diets?
Yeah, so I went through a baseline to begin with, so just like out of a magazine sort of diet.
Yeah.
I went through keto next, so like the really high fat ketogenic diet. I went through vegan next, and then I went through if it fits your macros, where basically eat whatever as long as your fiber, protein, carbs, fat all hit what they need to be within your calories.
Yeah.
So I went through 12 months of all of this stuff, tracked everything, blood tests, DEXA scans. Again, this is very Tim Ferriss-ish. There's not many people that will go through the detail of what we do or what I did to get this done. And I thought I was going to learn about diets, which I did.
Yeah.
But I learned more about myself more than anything through that.
Okay.
And the biggest lesson that I learned was when I was tracking calories and I was tracking everything.
Yeah.
If I wanted to have alcohol in it, I could put alcohol within my diet within a moderation, and it wouldn't affect me training-wise, or not much. It wouldn't affect me. It's better not to have it, but it wouldn't really have a negative effect on my body composition. I could still lose body fat, and I could still feel fine.
Yeah.
And it amazed me because my whole life I've lived in extremes. I was either not training and partying, or I was super in shape. I was either, being a musician on stage, or I was being a top baseballer, or I was being whatever I did. I always did in the extremities completely. You know, when I started bodybuilding, within 2 years, I was competing in bodybuilding.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was always the extremes. And this is the first time in my life I actually understood moderation.
Okay. That's
And
big.
that was the biggest revelation of my whole 2017, which was, I can have a couple of drinks and it's okay, and I don't need to feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was like, I'm not an addict. Like I'm okay. Like this is fine. There's no, now that I can understand this and I can track it, I have a way of measuring when things are okay, when things are not okay. It's like tracking your finances. It's like tracking anything. And all of a sudden, I just was like, oh, wow, this is actually okay. Like, you don't need to feel guilty for having a drink or like, you know, whatever. Whatever it is, you can make this fit within your lifestyle, and it's acceptable to have. Even then I kind of reached this conclusion where, and by the way, if someone's NA or they're AA, don't take this advice, because it's not, I guess, this system, and I don't recommend them to take this advice. But yeah, for me, all of a sudden I got to see this in a different light. I got to not feel guilty for having one sip of alcohol, which before it would send me into a spin because I would feel like I was a failure of a human being. Yeah. And all of a sudden I started to have like this healthy connection with things that I've never had before since my early 20s, when that failure with that business went down, and all of a sudden I started using things in a really negative way. So last year was a very successful year for me in a lot of ways.
Sounds like it. That's powerful to have that realization.
Huge.
And so do you feel like that realization allowed you to forgive yourself for having gone through what you went through?
So this is where it's going to go into left field. So I started studying a lot on learning about, and started studying a lot about psychedelics. Okay. So psychedelics, things like, you know, DMT, mushrooms, LSD, these sort of things. And in, you know, ayahuasca, you know, in Southern America, these things are actually used as treatments for alcoholics. And I started to, people with drug addictions, alcoholics, these sort of things, if used correctly and medically.
Yeah.
So, and I'd never done anything like that before, but I was at a stage where I kind of understood this moderation, and I really was like wanting to learn about myself. Yeah. As far as, you know, I'm comfortable, like me and my girlfriend have a great relationship. You know, I'm in a good position in life. I'm very comfortable with who I am as a person. I don't have these struggles. I still go through depression, but I learn how to identify it early as much as I can and try and speak about it early. I still get anxiety sometimes, but I learn to identify it. So I'm kind of learning these things better, but I wanted to know why it all stemmed and where it came from and that. So, okay,
and when you say you wanted to learn about yourself, was this just physically and mentally, or was that spiritually as well? Because
all of it.
All these psychedelics are
like very spiritual. Yeah, they are. And it's more spiritual. It's more mental and spiritual more than anything. Okay. So I decided to do my first like psychedelic trip.
Yeah, and what was that?
It was LSD.
Nice.
Yeah, so I decided to do my first trip, and it was in the right environment. It took me time. It took me about 3 months, and like planned it all out. Yeah. And I did it, and I didn't know what to expect. Like, if you've never done these things, like, you can't explain it until you've done it. And it was such a crazy experience. Because through this trip and through the chaos of this whole experience and try and keep it together, I have like, I hate smoking. I don't like smoking, but I enjoy the process of smoking. So I actually have like non-nicotine vapes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't use it, like I get disposable ones, I don't use them all the time, but I had this vape for this occasion, and it was funny because this whole chaos around this whole trip and everything that was going on, like it was positive, it wasn't a bad thing, but there was this vape, and it was the only thing which was solid, which kept me grounded and had a sense of reality whilst all this stuff was going around me. So whenever I was like in this trip and sensing that, you know, things were getting a bit like out of hand, or I would just pick up this vape and give it a smoke, and out of all this geometric sort of reality that I'm seeing, the smoke was the only thing which wasn't geometric, and the actual vape was the only thing which was actually solid that was keeping me grounded. And it was so weird because this whole reality in this trip was kind of teaching me lessons about like having this center point of your life. Yeah. And, you know, all the things that I learned in church, which is weird bringing it back this way, but all these things about having like God as this foundation, this rock of your life, with all this chaos and all this mess, if you come back to this rock which is so stable, your life will be kept within order.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm having like these weird sort of reality checks of, holy shit, throughout all those years, your center was like, you were using drugs or alcohol as your center, and they're not solid. Like, they're not a solid foundation. And so you were coming back to this thing in the chaos of your life to try and numb it. But how can you, like, have this rock when it's literally just like a house of cards?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a stability point for your life. And all of a sudden, I saw myself for who I was and what I was using it for the first time ever. And it was like, wow. And it was so bizarre because I knew it, and now then I could see it.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel angry for myself at all. I felt sympathetic, and I went, dude, you went through a lot of stuff, and that's how you dealt with it. And it's the first time that I saw that that's how I dealt with things over all those years.
That's really good.
Yeah, so it was a bizarre experience. Saying that, like, because people are probably going to listen to this and go, damn, the Perthfitfam guy just took an LSD trip. I got to the end of that, and the first thing I said was, you know what? I would never recommend anyone ever do that.
Why is that?
Sorry, I should rephrase that. Best experience of my life, by far. It takes a lot out of you physically. It feels like you've just walked, like, you know, a 1,000-mile race. Like, physically, mentally, spiritually, it takes a lot out of you. It's a different thing to other drugs. Like, it's not a come down.
Yeah.
You actually feel quite good, but you feel, and again, this is my experience. You feel quite enlightened, as long as it's been a good experience, but it is very tiring physically and mentally. But I got to the end and I was so exhausted from the whole thing. It's like I've had 100 years worth of life lessons within this one sitting, and I'm just like, I would never recommend anyone do that unless they're 100% mentally and physically ready for it.
Yeah.
You need to be accepting of it when you do it.
Yeah, I think what you did as well, especially listening to a lot of Tim Ferriss and Aubrey Marcus.
Yeah.
All those people who talk about psychedelics a lot.
Yeah.
What you did was you planned it out and you made sure your environment suited the psychedelic. So making sure that you're in a safe place, one you feel comfortable, you're in the right mindset, and obviously you're fit to look after your body.
Yeah.
So that you can take on that psychedelic.
Yeah. So Aubrey Marcus, who you just said, so anyone who doesn't know him, he's one of the big wigs in this area at the moment, but he actually owns On It, which is a website also owned by Joe Rogan, which is where I learned all this stuff from, by the way, which kind of put me on the path of self-discovery this way. And it's all about human performance. I'm really not a fan of, like, you know, drugs, and I've seen how negative it can be. I think that you need to be educated with whatever you do, and I don't do stuff, I would say, for recreational sense. I would not sit there, hey, let's get messed up. Like, it's not my jam. It's not my jam anymore.
Yeah.
The self-discovery side of things, I think, are so life-changing.
Yes.
And it's not an ongoing thing. And, like, they're talking about it now in the States. So they're using MDMA to treat depression.
Yes.
I don't know much about that, and I would not self-administer.
And ADHD, I think, as well.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And
So
kids.
So we're in a different time at the moment where, you know, weed is becoming, legalized over there, and they're starting to open up, and even looking at some of the benefits of CBD. And I'm not a weed smoker. I just don't enjoy it. I've had, like, weed vaping.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not, like, a massive fan of the feeling, so I just don't do it. Some people can do it, and that's sweet. It's probably the better of the baddies. With the psychedelics, they're looking at utilising these for literally what I did, and it's helping people kind of discover more about themselves and go through these addictions and, you know, understand why. Like ayahuasca is massive at the moment.
Yeah.
People in South America going there to do that. I would do that. Like, when the time is right, I will go and do it. But like I said, it was one of those things. It's not recreational, and it's not something that would be done frequently.
Yeah, it's especially in South America, all these tribes where you do the ayahuasca and psychedelics. It's meant to be a spiritual journey, and that's where you're supposed to end up to have your revelation,
Yes.
like you did. And it's supposed to release all the baggage that you've stored through throughout your life. So that might be why you felt so exhausted, because you are supposed to release everything you've been holding on to to allow yourself to not just forgive yourself, but reach that realization.
Yeah.
Where you find, I guess, your purpose or whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah. It's quite bizarre. So I'm sure I'll get like a bunch of messages now of people asking me about this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting time that we're in, that this stuff is being looked at now as hey, maybe this is beneficial, and I think it definitely is. But yeah, it's definitely a disclaimer to people: don't just go out there now and search it, understand, and get educated before you do anything.
Yes.
And it's not a recreational thing, so don't use it in the sense of, hey, let's just go get messed up.
Yeah, and it's not something for people to use when they are in those dark periods of their life.
Definitely
you have to
not.
be in the right mental state.
Yeah.
To do something like this, so you get the right outcome. Otherwise, you're more than likely going to have a bad trip.
Yeah, and I've never experienced that. I've only had like a good experience, but it's definitely something that can happen. And like what you said, like, you know, setting, environment, mindset, like all that stuff. You got to be ready, like leading in. Anyway, so I don't want to like glorify it too much.
No, that's right. I think it's important, like, especially like you said, moving into this age or this paradigm shift, where we are moving away from traditional big pharma into more natural approaches. Yeah. So it's nice to hear someone say that, but not take it to the extent where, like, this is what you have to do to have a realization or to get to that point. No, definitely not. But for me, big life changer. Yeah. I mean, like, in summary, like, I went through a lot of traumatic shit, and I still, like, you know, I still put on a face externally. And some people knew what I went through. Most people don't. This is the first time I've spoken about it in this degree, so I know I'm going to share this through my platforms. And there's a lot of friends, there's a lot of family, there's a lot of just people that know me out there that are going to learn a whole bunch of stuff. For people that do suffer with this stuff, I still go through depression. Like I said, I still go through anxiety, but I have learned how to deal with it. I've learned the science earlier. Yeah. When I was younger, like in my let's say my mid-20s, even up until my 30s, I didn't understand the mental discipline or how to deal with this stuff. The same way that somebody gets obese because they don't understand how to diet, and like it just happens, you know what I mean? I've never been like fat, and it's hard for me to comprehend how somebody can get obese when I'm, you know, just diet and exercise, man. But for them, it's such a weird concept. For me back then, I drew the conclusion of, hey, I can't relate. I don't have empathy of how somebody gets fat. Yeah. But I do have empathy of how somebody lets go of their mind control, and they let the depression stem into it, because it's so subtle and it's hard to control. So I can relate to that. For people in their 20s, you're gonna eat a lot of shit. Like, you know, all these people putting stuff out, like, you know, hustle, everything's good. Like, no. Most people, like, people even in their 30s probably still haven't found themselves. Yes. A lot of people. And I'm probably lucky that I did get that self-awareness at a young age, and now I have that mental thing of, hey, it's all about personal discovery and learning about yourself. And that's very much like where my headspace is at. But, you know, wanted to be this big shot, this big guy, and because I wasn't, it affected my life in such a negative way, to the flip side of that now being in my 30s and, you know, I guess having a certain level of success in certain areas now, but I don't hold on to any of it because I know it's going to go and it's not that important to me. It literally is not, like, not at all. If it all went, if I deleted all my accounts, I probably wouldn't even care. Like, whatever, I'll just do my thing. So you're comfortable enough with yourself that you feel like if everything does go, you can work to achieve that again?
Yeah, I would do what was in my heart to do, and I would do it to my best ability. I wouldn't try and chase the same thing. Yeah. That's
powerful. Thank you for sharing that story, by the way.
Like,
someone in your position, as silly as it sounds, in the limelight in the Perth fitness industry.
Yeah.
And now, I guess, branching out over Australia into the eastern states.
Yeah. Yep.
It's powerful for someone in your position to actually open up and share something like this, something very personal like that.
Yeah.
Something that's been a burden, like those failures for so long.
Yep.
it's powerful, and it's only going to encourage more people to open up. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for doing that.
No, thank you.
It's a big task, man.
Yeah, like I said at the start, I had to write notes because I wanted to make sure that I went in depth.
Yeah.
And I really got to give people a lot of raw sort of stuff. So even talking about like what we just did, especially with the psychedelics, I want to make sure that people know, hey, like this is open. This is, this is real life.
Oh, that's cool, man. I guess we want to move on to like recovery. Obviously, tips, tools, and tactics. You used the psychedelics. Was there anything else that you felt helped you through or got you out of that mental state?
Yeah, sure. So, what do I know? Where's my keys? Yeah. So, I actually still carry this on my keychain. So, if anyone sees my keychain, I'm not an active member of like NA or AA or anything, but I actually went to a meeting. It was like, I guess when I was struggling, I was like, same thing, I just needed like a reset. And I went to this meeting. And I've never been back, but I went, just with like really, really good intentions. But I hold on to it because it's a reminder of, dude, if you want to play, then this is where you can end up. And that's like just keep things like, don't be stupid, like keep things in line. Remember where you've come from, sort of thing. This is not where you want to end up. So I always keep that on my keychain, and I'm quite open about it because it's always front of mind. If somebody's really dealing with this stuff, and I'm talking like if you're struggling bad with drug and alcohol, don't take my advice. Don't go and do some shrooms or something. Trying to go find yourself. Go to NA. Go to AA. Don't do what I said.
Yeah. And why would you recommend that?
If they're fresh, they're probably not in a situation to do the psychedelics.
Oh no! Why would you recommend?
NA or AA? I just think it's a very proven model, which is tried and true. Actually, I can give you a better answer to that. I think it's a proven model. The only way that I got cleaned up was through community and through having the accountability of living with my best friend who was, a pastor who changed who I was exceptionally. Okay. So that was the only way that I changed successfully. Okay. So my advice would be go to NA, go to AA, go to one of these groups, be humble when you go in, and just contribute to a community. Or go, I don't know, if you're like on the edge with church, go to church. Go to a community where you can get help ongoing and where you can provide help to people ongoing. Because being a contributor is a massive part of it too.
Of course. Give you that sense of fulfillment and purpose.
Yeah, massive. It gives you, even if it's a small little sense of purpose, it's a sense of purpose which leads you in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay, so life now, what would you say your quality of life is like?
Quality of life. Good question. Really like awesome.
Yeah.
As far as, we've spoken about my ability to identify if I'm not mentally doing well. One of my biggest issues throughout all of this was like just supplements, like pre-workouts and stuff. Yeah, man, it was so bad because I used those things like, they're just, it's just supplements. This is what I sell. And I used those things, which probably kept me on edge, which probably affected my mental capacity throughout all of this and probably sent me in yo-yos.
Yeah.
So I have like a coffee during the day. I actually don't drink a lot of caffeine now, whereas before I would have like a couple of pre-workouts, coffee, all sorts of stuff. And so I do that, and it helps keep me a lot more grounded and probably stops the fluctuations. And if I have too much, like, I've tried modafinil, I've tried all of these smart drugs, all sorts of stuff, and they all send me into an anxious spin. Yep. Now, one of the biggest changes is I actually don't utilize anything anymore because I think my operating system kind of works pretty well as it is without having all these artificial stuff in. Yep. And so that calms down my anxiety. It probably affects my depression less. But if I do get it, I can identify it for what it is and I can treat it really, really rapidly. So mentally, that's probably, that's probably the best side of things.
Yeah.
If I ever like go out and drink or whatever, and I feel like it's probably a bit too much, as far as like, and I don't mean like relapsing into it, I mean like, just hanging out with friends or whatever, I don't get angry, I address the situation and I'm like, okay, cool, probably like, let's, that's an event, chill out, let it be its thing, move on with your life. Let's go be successful.
Okay.
And I dealt with that. I definitely don't.
So do you mean if you go out and have a big night, you don't let it become a burden?
No, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I definitely don't let things become a burden. I understand, that you're human, and that you're not, you're not this Instagram model perfect lifestyle sort of thing. And so, but then saying that if things are habitual, then that's obviously an issue, and then you address it from there.
So just like that one night or that one moment of release where you have a binge on something doesn't determine.
Yeah, my binges are definitely a lot less bingy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
a lot less bingy. So, it's like, even if you have like 4 drinks or something, it's like, okay, cool, yeah, that's okay, that's not an issue.
Yep.
That's it. Move on with your life.
Okay, and so what have you recently added or removed within your life to improve the quality of it?
Towards the end of life, definitely tracking. So for me, tracking stuff is a big improvement to my life because I can actually see what's going on. So that's like tracking food, tracking all bits and pieces. And so if I want to, actually talking about these, binge is a bad word. If I want to have a few drinks, hey, this fits in within my lifestyle, I can have this without feeling guilty. Okay. So adding that sort of stuff. And that's food as well. Because I come from like this life of dieting extremely hard and then having a cheat day where you go nuts, which is generally how I lived my life. Now I will look at my calories or my macros and I'll say, oh, hey, this is our refuel day, and it all fits within your lifestyle, which is definitely a much healthier way to live.
What do you love about your life at the moment, having gone through all this struggle?
I love that I'm comfortable in my skin, number one. That's probably the biggest thing. I like that I can openly say I don't idolise anyone. That I'm that happy with myself. I don't look at anyone of envy saying, oh, I wish I had that. I'm like so content with like who I am as a person, with where I'm going. That sense is like a really, really good place to be.
It's not something many people can say, and it's quite odd, but it's amazing because of the position you're in. With media business, obviously having to deal with that side of things all the time, which is this place where you give this false, portray this false life most people do anyway. And not being sucked into that's really powerful. And someone like you in that space is content enough to actually accept who you are and be happy with it.
It's weird for me. My downfall, I think, at the moment is I'm that comfortable and I've got that thick skin that I forget that other people don't. And sometimes I forget what I went through and how people feel. So I assume that everyone's in the same boat. And then, even now, thinking back, and I'm like, maybe it is a rare thing for people to be that comfortable with, no matter who you're standing in front of or whoever you're speaking to, whether they're, whatever area of life or whatever they've achieved, there's a sense of equalness between you and them, and everything's just okay.
Cool. And on to mission, you said you found your purpose at 30. What do you think that purpose or that mission is for you now?
So definitely making an impact within the fitness scene.
What sort of impact?
So Fitfam Media, Perthfitfam, whatever this Fitfam brand evolves to, that will be my legacy within the that will be the thing which I created, which I sell, I do whatever, I walk away from, and then I move on to the next stage of my life. So at the moment, my purpose is really discovering what that is, what this Fitfam brand is, growing it with my business partner, Brett, and the other people that become involved within the business, and making sure that we create an impact in a positive light, whether that is, connecting people into fitness, showcasing what's out there, inspiring people to live this healthy, fit, sort of active lifestyle, just doing cool content, having a bit of a laugh along the way, but developing a business which is then sellable, which creates such an impact in the industry that I can leave it as, hey, that's my mark that I've left. Now it's time for my life to head in this sort of direction.
That's also something that most people can't say that out, which direction they're heading, what their purpose is. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
Now, obviously, this podcast being about mental health, you having gone through what you went through, the depression, the attempted suicide, the fear of failure and the self-loathing.
Yeah.
How, I don't know if this is got to be a bit off the top of the head, but
Yeah.
how do you think that we as society and this people in this space can end the stigma around actually opening up and talking about what we're going through mentally?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think there's so many good organisations that have started within the past, let's say, 3 years.
Yeah.
So, Living, it does a fantastic job with raising awareness. So, an 8-week speak. So you've got Sam Webb and Casey with that. The Happiness Co-Boys from Perth, obviously, they're doing good stuff. So, Perthfitfam and they're going to be doing a lot of work together in their health. Yeah, so, we catch up with Robbie and Julian to help really spirit drinks in the Perth fitness scene. Guys like yourself doing this sort of stuff. People like me being open to talk about it. So like you said, I reckon people who listen to this would have no idea about any of this.
Yeah, it's going to be a big shock because you
put out that fun sort of vibe all the time.
As it sounds, you're like the happy-go-lucky guy in the fitness industry, especially in CrossFit.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it's...
yeah, it's true. So
it is going to change people's perspective, but it's awesome, man. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, and that was the thing is, it's like that authenticity is being real enough to be able to say to people, hey, well, listen, if you think that I'm this, and you don't think that you're anything, well, I'm just letting you know, hey, I've gone through this, and I still need to keep an eye on things. Like I still keep an NA tag on my keys to remember, hey, if you want to go down a direction, that's where you're going to end up. Or I never am that confident that I'm never going to slip into a bad enough depression that I don't want to kill myself. And I'm always like, hey, man, if that comes around, you've got to be ready for it. Yeah.
Well, like you said, life is ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And you are proof that you don't have to stay in the ebbs. You can ride the flows.
Yeah.
And get back to a place where you are content. And
just learn to ride the flow, and always keep in mind, hey, this is going to end one day. Like it's going to end soon. It's going to be okay. You feel like shit, just talk about it, but you're eventually going to come out of it. The issue is when you're going through these highs and lows and you think, oh, I'm on a high, life's going to be great forever. And then you go into a deep, deep low and you're like, oh, life's going to be crap forever. And you just keep on flowing in between the two.
Awesome, bro. Thank you. Last question, stolen from Tim Ferriss. You probably know this one.
Yeah.
If you had a billboard on the freeway in Perth where hundreds of thousands of people would see it every day, what would it say?
Oh, man. The first thing that came to mind?
What?
If it just said...
Not PerthFitFam.
No, I was going to say that as a joke. I would say, you are exactly where you're meant to be.
Well,
that would be on there. Because I can imagine it's like peak hour and people being so angry and it's like, they're trying to be somewhere at a certain time and it's not working out for them. And just that reminder, hey man, it's cool. You're exactly where you're supposed to be at this point in time. If I learned anything from my 20s, I wish that I learned that, where it's like, dude, it's okay. Life's a marathon. You don't need to be... you don't need to be a Donald Trump at 24. You're sweet, man.
Exactly.
I was going to be a 25-year-old millionaire. You don't need to be that. You are exactly where you are meant to be. I would say that.
That's cool, man. And last, to wrap up, just want to acknowledge you for taking the time out. First of all, I know how busy you are.
No, thank you.
Perthfitfam and Fit Media.
Fitfam Media. So that's like our wholesale, our wholesale side where we do a lot of consulting for people.
Yeah. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, especially on a Saturday. And I want to acknowledge you for the fact that, like I said, you are in this position of authority in the fitness space, and coming out and sharing something as personal as this is powerful, and it's going to mean a lot to people, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
That is going to affect at least one person. So
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, Lockie, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Like for me, what you're doing is like exceptionally awesome, and we've got to be able to chat about it a lot. So just keep up your good work too. But to be able to tell this story is something that I've never have, especially on a platform which is going to go public like this. It's like an honor to have me on, and it's an honor to be able to tell people. So if somebody does listen to it and like they have questions or they want to chat, feel free to like shoot me messages. I'm like pretty open with everything. But yeah, man, thank you so much. Hey,
thanks, Brendo.
Sweet.
Thank you for listening to today's episode with Brendan McCormack. I hope you did find those nuggets of gold that I talked about at the start of the podcast. If you did, please let us know, whether that's in the reviews or on the Facebook page. And again, if you want to get in touch with Brendo, he is open to talking to people who are suffering through similar situations. We'll put contacts to him and to Perthfitfam and Fitfam media in the show notes below. But apart from that, and in wrapping up this episode, I just want to say thank you so very much for listening. It means the world that you are here, spending your time with us, listening to these stories, and eventually we will achieve that mission of making speaking about the stresses on the mind as acceptable as speaking about the stresses on the body.